episode of Skills Hub on air. Oh, hello. We've already got people set coming in. Hello, everybody, all the commenters. Um, Today, Jennifer and I have Samantha Béart, the lovely voice of Karlach in Baldur's Gate 3. Oh,
I was going to say, hey,
I hear.
soldier.
Do I
What's
hear
happening?
myself? Oh, sorry. Technical error. I heard myself in playback. I'm like, why do I hear playback? Okay. Hi,
Can I just
everybody.
add the voice and body of Karlach? We did our mocap
Oh,
too.
Yes.
yes.
Love this
I did
so
hundreds of
much.
hours, and I know it amounts to about 11 hours of audio. And Jennifer, you know what how long it would actually take to just
Yeah.
do 11 hours of finished audio. It's not
Yeah.
260 hours. So
Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
mention
Yeah.
mention that. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Um, that's actually a great topic to start off about.
I
Would
love
you
that
would you
topic.
mind touching base on mocap for some of us that are new and don't really understand like the whole process of it?
Well, every studio is different, so I have
Hmm.
to be quite careful in the way I generalize because I've obviously had my experiences and they'll be very different to someone else's. But
Mm.
essentially, they're using cameras to track reflective balls they put on your body in a very, very unflattering kind of scuba suit,
Hmm. Hmm.
in which they will now take your skeleton and be able to animate that. So in my case, they were able to make her bigger and all the rest. And what's beautiful about Baldur's Gate is, yeah, it's we have hundreds of actors and it's each actor's unique
Mm.
physical blueprint in terms of their breath and their movement. And I think that was actually partly to do with why it felt so immersive for people.
Yeah.
And we did that with voice at the same time. So yeah, there's that great
Yeah.
Shakespearean, suit the was it the the Shakespeare
Yes.
Shakespeare's
Yep.
advice to the players, the movement to the word, action to the word, and the word to the action. Got there in the end. I know comments probably going crazy, going what Shakespearean training. Yeah, so that was wonderful. I'm working on something right now where they're going to do that completely separately, and that's a brand new thing for me as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Wow.
It often gets done that way as well. I mean, we've got, in games so often they'll capture our performances like the vocal performance, and then a separate performer will go in and do the movement. And then
Hmm.
they call that language is in the US is voice acting, and then motion capture, and then performance capture here in the US is when we weave both of them together
Yeah.
at once. Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to learn, like, let's say, for if you're in a game similar to, let's say, Call of Duty or like a fantasy game, like for like, or do you have to learn any fighting sequences beforehand? Is that somebody else? Like, how does that process work?
Again, I think it depends on
Mm.
how the studio work. I think, I mean,
Interesting.
Baldur's Gate, I think whenever anything was isometric, that's
Mhm.
animation. And when it's from the sort of torso
Oh,
up, that's us. And then when we're walking across the floor, that's a mixture of another mocap actor plus your performance pasted onto the top of it. So, and every studio is completely different.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
you're talking about stunts, they normally get someone else to do that.
mm,
But
That's
it
something that
interesting.
depends.
Yeah, that's something we've fought for
Yeah.
over the years, is to have stunt performers and a stunt
Mm.
coordinator and that kind of thing. That's part of what's been going on and working really hard to get
It's funny, isn't it? It's
established.
like in movies sometimes the stunts and sex, they're the ones they sort of leave you
Yeah.
alone with. And you go, no, 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 that's the
Right?
last thing.
Yes.
I need
Mm-hmm.
help.
Mm-hmm.
And for
Yep.
everybody commenting, hi everybody, hello, greetings. If anybody has a question, please feel free to pop it in the chat and then we can throw it up on the big screen here for Sam to answer. Before I delve into even more questions, I would love to start off with like a little bit of intro about yourself, how you got into acting, because we were talking a little bit about that before we went live.
Yeah, so we've only got this half hour, so I'm going to keep it brief. It's been a very long journey. I loved stories as a child. I was very introverted.
Mm.
I ended up doing an English degree because you like stories, you need a degree. And it was about halfway through that I started going to see Shakespeare in London as it was part of the curriculum to do a Shakespeare module.
Mm.
And just seeing all those performances really hit me. And I went, oh, I like storytelling in this way. And I
Yeah.
started to pursue acting. But as a kid, I was in singing, dance, and acting. But acting, I was terrified of. I didn't really know what was going on because the whole point is to make it look naturalistic, so I can't see it, right, and I can't
Yeah.
comprehend it. And it took, I had to be an adult to do that. And then I trained at a conservatoire called Guildhall in London for 3 years. And I just before that I did a show called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the
Mm.
fifth book, which no one's read, don't worry. It's called Mostly Harmless, and I play a character called Random Dent who ends up being quite important. I'm thinking spoilers, but it's a million years old now. It's about 25 years old. But I came out of drama school and sort of went straight into this tour for Hitchhikers, and I found it very hard to get cast in visual media. In the UK, they see me as ethnically ambiguous, and that means unrepresented. And it's very much, have you thought of passing for X, Y, and Z? And like, yeah, no, thanks. So I was doing a lot of audio media, and I was doing from Hitchhikers, we went to Big Finish, and I played a lot of tough chicks in space. And I was kind of spinning my wheels for a while doing that. And then Jennifer, I started playing Mass Effect 2, and I saw I could pick a female character. And you were my Shep, and I went, oh, yes, of course, video games. You've been playing these forever, and you two tough chicks in space.
Yeah.
And so it began. And I was knocking on doors a lot. I was doing the usual actor in film and TV thing, which is to sort of go to casting directors. But in games, at least in the UK, there aren't so many. So I started going to dev meetups. And it just took a very long time, and but after a while you get known, and because the devs, again, in the UK, or maybe it's just indie devs, they wear so many hats. You may be being cast by the composer or the intern or the writer, whereas in the other media, one person does one job and that's it, and no one steps on everyone's toe. I've done casting for people when, you know, when something maybe is not quite right for me, I can find that actor who's been saying, hey, I want to get into games. So it makes it's already sort of collaborative on the outside before you even start actually working. So I've loved my time in this medium. That wasn't too bad. That was two and a bit minutes. Well done,
that was amazing. That was impressively brief. Impressively brief. The entire lifetime.
2 years of talking Baldur's Gate being asked how I became an actor has started to come down a bit.
I love that. I think I love that Mass Effect sparked something for you. That's
really hell cool. Yeah. And you know, it's just a great game, you know. And I was like, and you know, I was playing Assassin's Creed 2 came out with Ezio, and he's this fully formed, undiscovered Shakespearean character, and I'm just going, oh, they're ready for the actors, aren't they? The text is now good enough for us to really make a mark here. You know, it was a really that sort of what I'm talking 2005 onwards to the end of 2010. I thought it was a very exciting time for narrative in games.
Really was, really very much so.
This is going to shift the topic a little bit, but I like this question. Something we talk about a lot in the SkillsHub community is how you brand yourself as a VA. If you were to give yourself a personal tagline, what would it be? Mine is nerdy, wordy, gentle giant. I love that.
Oh, wow. I'm going with a BAFTA-nominated actor at the moment.
Yeah, girl.
Stick that at the top.
Yes,
because I get to say that for life. So
yes, that's been... yes, you do. Enjoy that. Enjoy the heck out of that.
Thank you.
I love this topic because I caught a post the other day. I think it's Adam Grant, and it was so beautifully said. Like, first of all, Adam Paul, hello, hi, love that question. I think I have two thoughts about this. One of them is like it is important to know how you come across, how you occur, kind of what your spot is. If you go to Joseph Campbell and The Power of Myth and Stories, and there's archetypes in every story, there's a given number of archetypes in every story, and they're the same across stories, but we're all different, right? And we slot into those, and there comes the uniqueness of the performance. But it is important to understand where you fit, where you fit. But at the same time, I think some of the unspoken glitter inside of each of us is when we go, I am a thing, I do have a brand, I fit in a spot, and I am nothing, and I am no brand, and I fit in no spot. Like, I know where the casting director needs to see me in this thing, but guess what? Once you open that door, a multitude of a human being opens up.
Absolutely.
I'm not confined to a brand. I love those two things together. Yeah,
it's a
I think that's great advice.
Like. Yeah, it's a fine line you have to walk. One of our coaches, Amanda Troop, and I have a good conversation coming up on our YouTube. We delved into the topic of like, I like the sound of my voice, but I don't know where I belong. And like, you belong where you want to belong. Like, I understand you may have like, like with people that have like a higher range of voice, they may get cast with like characters that are like fairies or something, cutesy characters, but like you go where you fit. And I think your brand is yourself. Your brand is being yourself and knowing who you are, because you can fit anywhere you want to fit in.
Yeah. And that's
I've played.
Yeah. Okay,
I was going to say, I've played a broader range of characters in this medium than I ever will in visual media. And I was saying to you, Zelda, before we started, I'm sitting on 8 titles at the moment. It looks to the outside world like I haven't worked since Baldur's Gate 3 came out, but I have.
This is the industry, and we can't talk about any of them.
And we can't talk about any of it. And I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at, there's no two genres alike. The characters are completely different. And I'm going, this is like 1990s Gary Oldman stuff. I'm getting to play everything.
Yeah.
in a way that, you know, we can talk about the voice and where that's the technicality, but in terms of the emotional impact, the narrative, the even the form, it's the way it's played. One's on a mobile, it's found phone kind of thing, and you know, others are going to be consoles, and it's just mind blowing. And I feel so lucky that we're here to do that, where you are being judged on merit to more of a degree. Of course, nothing's perfect, but you know, that actually comes in. It's a very freeing medium. And yeah, exactly. It's great to know where you fit, but God, don't limit yourself too much.
Exactly. Exactly.
Always stretch. Always stretch. Never rest on your laurels. Always stretch. Yeah.
Another good one from Josephine is, are you finding any changes happening in the moment about how acting is being captured in games? Is performance capture becoming more prevalent? So,
Well, I think it is. More and more companies, but that is among the sort of AAA productions, right? Because it's expensive. PCAP is very expensive. You know, I think the whole industry, it's one of the few growing sectors of entertainment right now are games. Like everything else is kind of hovering and contracting a little bit and not really sure which way is up at like much of the world right now. And I think, you know, you see a lot of growth in indie games and things like that, but that's typically strictly voiceover. Performance capture, more and more people are stepping into it. More and more productions are stepping into it. And I love it. It is one of my favorite ways to work. Yeah.
I've had I can say where it's going in terms of the narrative is becoming more important. So as I said, I'm doing all these different genres in which there's a beat 'em up that requires some serious acting, and there's a real-time strategy game which requires me to have done facial capture because it's really important for them to get that now, you know, and it's really changed in like 10 years.
Yeah.
The requirements, you know.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know facial capture, because we said PCAP performance capture, we said mocap. Facial capture, they'll send you a rig. There's this crazy like head thing. It's like straps under your head. And it's got all these things that stick out, and there's a camera out here, and it's your nose looks really huge in it. It's trippy, and it's capturing the movements of your face. And even in the pandemic, sometimes you would get actors getting shipped a rig to their house, and they had to strap in and do facial capture during the thing because you need it. You just need it. I did. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart here in this space. I actually started in another room with this glorified closet. But in here, we didn't do PCAP, but I had to have a very specific mic. And I still have the baseball cap in here. And I had to put it on my head right here and capture it with the baseball cap backwards and use that mic plus another specific mic. And they shipped them here. And that's how we did that. Like, there's so many different technical specifications. And that's what I want to shout out. Like, you know, as performers, we get the spotlight and we're like the ink of the pen. Everyone can see us, but the legions of humans that go into making these games work that never get seen and never get credited, they are incredible artists and technicians and minds and creators. They're amazing. Yeah.
interesting. So, what does an audition look like for this? I've done a few, but you know, for example, somebody was walking me through, sometimes they send you terminology like a cowboy shot, which is like hips up. And then there's certain advice that sometimes people would give me for mocap. But what would you say? What does a mocap audition look like? Because it's very similar to on camera, isn't it? Or
In my
PCAP?
experience, it was on camera.
Yeah.
You're not going
On
to
camera?
try and
Yeah.
replicate the suit or
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
They
Oh
literally
no,
want to see how
yeah.
you move.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky, you get to work with, you know, a movement director in our case, a performance director who's connected to you physically. And for theatre trained actors, it was very much our language. It's exactly the same people we work with in theatre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On a practical level, if you want to like this space that I'm in is a box, and it's you know, or you take your bedroom or whatever, your space where you audition, it's a box. And I know people who have like a rolled up thing of fabric that is this color gray that's behind me, because for if your skin is this color, that's the optimal one. If you're, you know, you can get a background that's optimal for what registers on camera for you, and you just set up your camera and do the thing. You do the thing. You send it out into the void. And you go, thank you, Muse, for letting me work another day. Yeah.
So you get to pick. So I've seen, you know, I've helped a lot of other actors with reading because sometimes they're like, we need a reader for this. I've seen a few people get very hung up with like, oh, I need to buy a prop, you know, like for this scene where I have a, you know, where I have like if I'm holding up something, I need something like this. Or they're like, you know, they'll move their whole house and we will spend literally a whole day What is your thoughts on that? How much does the background matter in terms of like if your character's picking up a prop, or if your character's like, let's say they're in a ship or something and then you need a chair. How picky do you think they are about that? Or is it more so building your world in your own mind where they can kind of, you may not have it, but you can like see that you're trying to shift something and you're looking up and pressing buttons. What would your response be
Well,
for that?
um, when we work in the volume, it is a giant box and
Mm,
it has gray boxes inside of it that sometimes you step on and sometimes you bump into and sometimes you work around or you hold in your hand.
mm,
And there's racks and racks of scaffolding around that a billion cameras hang from. Everything is pretend. They're not
mhm.
hiring you to be a set designer.
Yeah.
Um, if you need certain things and they help you in your creative process bring a character to life, grab
Mhm,
them, do it. Yeah, throw down. You're also not going to be able to hold anything except a gray box when you're
mm,
on set. They can't have anything in there that is anything that could register the wrong thing technically. So you
mhm,
need to show I can work with an empty gray box or empty space and make it work. The other thing too is part of the setting the set in your house and really getting into it creates backstory for you, right? It creates context. It
mhm.
creates emotional like frequencies and like you kind of vibe with the project more and you get into it more. That part of the value is great, but watch out.
Mhm.
Seriously, watch out because a significant amount of that is this thing I call unconscious avoidance. Anything but the take. Anything but the take. I need better equipment. Oh, I need to change my hair.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything but the take. You just got to get in it and you got to sit in the suck until it doesn't
Mhm.
suck and you're happy and then you're done.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
going to say it's, moving around all the stuff in the house sounds like procrastination to me, but but also I absolutely understand
In
what
a
you're saying.
word, there you
I
go.
think there's what you what helps you, because you don't
Mhm.
want to go, oh, never use props, because you don't know exactly what this person's doing, right? So
Yeah.
it's a balance between what helps you and what might distract. And
Mm,
yeah, as you said in the volume, Jennifer, you don't get to move your house in to make yourself feel more
Mm.
comfortable once you've got the job. But also, they're not going to punish you too much if you like. I had a scene in Baldur's Gate where I had to have a cigar, and they taped up some spoons. It was strange. They could have just got a cylindrical object, but but I had to have that in my hand because it just had to have that weight to it. I
Yeah.
mean, I didn't
mhm.
get, I just and then just got on with it. But it was rare that you got that. But some
Yeah.
other productions, they are full on productions. You are working in the volume with an ensemble of actors. It's a scene. It's like a film or TV scene, and you got to go
Mhm.
away. And you will have business, but yes, you got to be careful not to distract and make that not why you were remembered.
Yeah.
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 For those of us who don't have access to any real movement training for theater or performance, what sort of things could we do to help learn and prepare for that type of audition or role? That's a good one.
So a lot of my
Mhm.
movement training was yoga. It was straight
Oh,
up just get into that body and understand it and know where all the edges
wow.
are and the delicious places, and that
Mm,
confidence. And
Mhm.
that was I mean, for voice training, a lot of the time I talk about singing classes. I'm sure you have, Jennifer.
Yeah, oh
Like, I
yeah.
think
I
once
started
people can
as
access that,
I was a singer
you know,
first. Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
say it to singers who want to cross over. Like, you
Yeah.
technically you're kind of there, so it's really
mm,
good news.
Yeah.
It's really hard to say. You don't have to go into a full, a dedicated multi-year training at all. They're always like, one-off classes. There's places like this you can
Yeah.
learn,
SkillsHub.
and
Yeah.
as you know, and pay as you go. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't be so worried to sort of get the official version.
Yeah.
It's that
yeah.
spending that time with your body and your breath and your voice and
Mm,
all in
Yep.
one, really, isn't it?
Yep. And we've got, we have our, like, I think Trina Jensen's teaching a movement class here,
yep.
and we've got lots of people doing vocal health and things like that. And I would say also to add to that is just pay attention. Like, I remember one time I was rock climbing and I made a stupid move and I screwed up the very top clip. And it wasn't a hard climb. And
Mm.
then I did another stupid thing and I pushed off the wall, which you're not supposed to do. You're supposed to just drop. And I ended up going almost upside down and backwards. But I remembered the sound I made because I'm so
Uh-huh.
trained. I was like, oh, got to remember that sound. Another time I'm playing tag with my horse in a super deep sandy arena and he made some spin and I made a quick turn and I just face planted in this full just pile of sand. And I was like, oh, that's a great sound. I just went into my, as I'm down there, like, I'm like, oh, that was just as it happens, and I
If
broke
you
my foot.
survive,
Yeah.
remember this
Like
noise that you made.
yeah, I broke my foot and I
Oh,
jumped up
Jen.
in the air and I landed on the side of my right foot and snapped this metatarsal. And as I'm coming down and I'm like, oh, and my 4-year-old's in the room and I'm not wanting to swear around him, but I'm making pain sounds and my brain kicks in because awareness is trained, and this will happen to you too. And he goes, that's fascinating. That's a mid-tone sound. It doesn't have high pitch in it. I wonder why it's not high pitch, because I'm not afraid. I'm not in a dangerous situation right now. Oh, that's interesting. Jesus, this hurts. Like just awareness. Just keep your awareness tuned. Yeah.
It's another thing that Amanda and I talked about is just listening to the sound of your own voice too in all these situations can kind of help you, even like in a general, like just talking about voice acting in general. Like if you don't like your voice too, like just listening, how do you talk? How do you talk during a commercial? How do you talk like to your friends? How do how do you laugh? Like listening to it and getting used to the cadence and the tune.
Yeah.
Like one time I had an allergic reaction. And then I was like, you know what? This is good to know because I have to throw up next session. And I'm throwing up right now as I'm like hugging the bowl. I'm like,
You're there.
this is
You're
good.
there.
This is good for me to know.
Yes, it's so true. It's so true. That thing about listening to your voice, one of the things, we have these
Mm,
paths and there's step-by-step instructions, how to build this career
yep.
section by section, from your foundation all the way, games path, animation, commercials, all the income streams. And woven into every one of those is regular practice. And you got to
Hmm.
go in and you got to practice, but there's a specific formula. My Start It class is coming up again, and I teach a very specific way to practice in there, and it involves listening to yourself back on like
Mhm.
broken down by the minute. And part of that is to build some very important elements you need in terms of your mental habits, but also part of it is just getting used to the way you sound, because you can't get into I don't believe you can get into the creative, like tinker with all the cool tools part of this craft until you get past the, oh my god, I sound like this, oh my god, I sound like that. You got to get past that, so then you can start to create and
Yep.
play and tinker, and you're not even
Yeah.
your attention is freed to go to other places.
This actually is going to answer pretty much a question in the chat as well. For individuals just starting out to act and struggling with self doubt, fear of failure, how did you
Mm.
overcome the moments when your inner critic was the loudest? Was there a mindset shift that helped?
Oh,
I mean, we literally trained it out of us. They kicked it
Mm,
out of us in the first year of drama school.
did they?
Yeah, they called it inner critic, and we had to vocalize it. We had to perform something difficult and then stop, pause, monitor it, vocalize it, and talk to each other about that.
I'm
May I
curious.
swear on this? Can I swear?
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
Zelda. Okay, Zelda's
yeah.
the yeah.
Yes, we called it the little fucker. It's a little
Mm-hmm.
fucker that sits on your shoulder, because
Mm,
it doesn't only say, oh, that was terrible. It'll also say, and this is the worst voice, which, that was really good. You should do that again. And then what's happened?
Oh,
You've missed a cue. You're just sitting there in silence, enjoying it. So it's
mm,
evil, and you just have to, I guess, as you said, it's a technique and it's practice, and just getting used to being aware that voice is there, and maybe telling it to write it as an email later on if you want to
yeah,
talk about it, but
yeah.
not
mm.
right now. But yeah, listen, the voice is very seductive, and it's not just the critic, goes both ways. It can be very complimentary, and then I think that's might have been my moment that took me out. Actually, I was like, oh no, don't, no, evil. I think it might, but thankfully in the training and not on stage. So
Yeah,
it was, we did it for a, not every day, but for a term.
yeah,
We were looking at that, and
yeah.
again, what they call this Peter Brook magic space and sacred, so you're creating that safe
Mm-hmm.
space for you to
Mm.
explore,
Mm-hmm.
in which then you can do that sort of exercise where you're vocalizing,
Yeah,
the little mind tricks
yeah.
that are
That's
happening.
the thing that occurs to me listening to you too is to who was the person who asked the question? Is it yeah,
Sorry if I'm mispronouncing this. Vishalia?
Bashadi. To you and to every single person out there, I want to normalize this. It is completely part of the process. It doesn't mean
Hmm.
there's anything up with you. It doesn't mean anything you shouldn't be doing this. Like, it is 1,000% normal. And guess what? It doesn't go away fully. It will always be with you. But it's like, like if you were a boat going like this and then you like capsize and it took forever to get you back up, you know? The difference is you get better and better at just going, oh, and it looks like you never fall because you just get up so fast. You're like,
Hmm.
whatever. And you just go on with your day.
Right.
And you know, the process that Samantha just described of naming it and doing that, I had a version of this that came up on the fly because there came a point, I mean, several years in, I had done a bunch of animated series and was doing games and stuff, and I just wanted to quit. I wanted to quit everything, and I hated this. I hated it so much. And I was like, what is happening? People would kill for this job. What are you doing? And I tuned in and I realized that every single time I did an audition, every single time I did a take, that critic was like, I don't know. It was crap talking me the entire time. And so I left and I just felt bad, but it was such a low level.
Yeah.
It was so subterranean. I didn't realize it. And one day I heard it and I went, oh no, I've got you now. I can see you. You're mine. And so I made a conscious effort. Every single time I recognized one of those thoughts, I had to sub in 3 opposite thoughts. Every time I took a crap on myself, I had to do 3 things that I thought were valid, decent, or okay, or even good. 3 times. Every single time. It was so annoying. It was so annoying, that process, but it trained it right out of me. So, yeah.
You mentioned something in your start. I remember something in your started class too that really helped somebody. And I don't know. I remember I had this conversation with you. It was something about is it almost like a meditative thing that
Yeah,
happens in your class?
I do a visualization.
Mm.
And you can do visualizations. We do a visualization in there called Make It So, because we're nerds.
I love it.
We're
nerds.
We're nerds. We love it. Whatever. Yeah, and you see yourself in that space, and the mind, like, I think, we don't know anything. We're all blind mole rats anyway. We can only perceive 4% of matter that exists, and we're the ones who decided it was a giant 4%. So I don't even know. But I know that you can harness the power of the unconscious mind to train the conscious mind. And the way you do it is visualization is really powerful, especially if done when you first wake up and right before you fall asleep. So you can, if you're a person who's struggling with this self-doubt monster, you can imagine and see yourself as you fall asleep each night, and as you first thing when you wake up in the morning, see yourself uplifting yourself, holding yourself, having your own back, feeling incredibly confident in any given situation. Everything we worry about is fiction. It is 1,000% fiction. It is daydreaming in the negative. So you can give yourself permission to daydream in the positive. Just make up good stuff that could be happening and you don't even realize it yet. So that's the unconscious programming. Very, very important.
So important, especially in the beginning stages. I feel like a lot of people focus on technique, but that I feel like it's
Which
so
they will
often
then beat
overlooked.
themselves up about as well, of
Yes.
course.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
skip mindset and they skip business. You're building a business, and without a business, you ain't going anywhere. So
Yes, it's called show business, but there is business in there.
exactly.
It's definitely a business.
Exactly. They don't pay us in like peanuts and beads. They pay us in
They would.
cash.
They would if they could, Jennifer. Remember that.
Trust me. Trust me, I know.
Oh, this is a good one. Are there any specific challenges playing a character with multiple narrative progressions? Ooh.
Yes, which is why you have a good collaborative team to guide you through. Hopefully you've got someone from relevant departments available to have that discussion, and it's something we had on Baldur's Gate. It was so great, and it was like a hive mind of about 30 directors we had. So about half a movement directors, half a voice. Sometimes they crossed over as well, but if they'd done a scene with another character 3 weeks ago, they remember how that worked out. Or there'll be a total nerd engineer in the room that knows how to pronounce that word, and so you just you do ask around, but it is such a collaborative. So, some of these people have seen the area you're in, but you may never see it till it comes out, so you got to listen to that as well and take that in. The answer is that they knew that would be a challenge, and they supported us really well on that. But what about you, Jennifer? You've done this a lot, so you've done quite a few times in your life. I've just got the one experience. But
I think you described it beautifully. This is where, to me, directors and voice directors come in. Voice directors are some of the unsung heroes of this whole thing, and they're really this piece holding it all together, because behind them, on this side of the glass or on this side of the production, you've got all this entire team of creatives and ideas and this and that going around, and then in front of them, they've got to take all this background and story. And in games, we don't work sequentially. You will in PCAP to an extent, but we don't work sequentially. In a voice acting session, Mass Effect, for example, I would be doing a scene from here on the timeline, and then I'd bounce to here, 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 and back and forth. And I rely heavily on the voice director in that moment to give me context, because context is everything. To the newer actors out there, please, God, never ask yourself how to say a line. Please don't do that ever, 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 please. You want to ask yourself what just happened? What do I want? What am I trying to get them to do? What's in front of me? You can ask yourself, how do I feel about what just happened? That's a how that is allowed, but there's very, very few hows, very few hows, you know? And so voice directors provide all that context to give you specificity, which marries to the true life within yourself. And that's what creates the fire.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Oh, sorry, one final
We
question.
got a
since
late
we're-
question.
Yeah, let's bring it.
How does conveying emotions work in mocap? Is there a different approach given that there's no costumes or defined sets?
Oh, so acting, is that the
Yes.
But I mean, this is why I keep iterating that for the theatre actors is quite liberating, because the black box is what we're used to, especially low budget productions, and we have to see that again. Another early Peter Brook kind of experience was, you know, you come on in silence, right? It's whispered in your ear where you are, and you just have to perform that. But you obviously don't give that out, you inhabit, you know. So if it's a jail cell, someone might go, oh, hang on, if you pace up and down a bit, it'll look a bit more like, oh no, hang on, you look like you're bored in your office, so maybe like take the energy, you know. And you have these discussions and you live it, and exactly what Jennifer said, the specificity is the soul of narrative, and it's all about that. I find it really liberating, just, you know, being in that costume. They're not using my face most of the time. Yeah, there is something in, you know, because obviously I've been doing audio stuff for so long, and because they can hear everything in that voice, right? There's no gesture to hide behind. The great thing about mocap is you're getting a little bit of that back. You're not getting the face, but you are getting the gesture. So I do remember when we were doing spells and things that shouted over the battlefield that didn't require mocap, you know, the camera zoomed out, you're fighting. I had to sort of push it vocally a little bit more. And I don't mean volume, I mean like intensity, because my body couldn't help me out. It's weird, but that's what happened.
Is
that right? Did you say that's fair? Because it's the first time I'm talking about this.
Yeah, no, I think it's exactly right on. I agree with everything you said. And PCAP's such a funny balance. I always, you know, I often say it's like in your body, you're doing theater, but in your voice, you're doing film, you know, because that's how games have evolved to. And that level of truthfulness, but you also you got to, you know, make it land. That physicality.
You got to give them
so
something
important.
to animate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much, Samantha, for coming on and answering all these questions. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in and asking all of your questions. We had some really great ones.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for our guests next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.